Birmingham, Alabama, 1963. A city so notorious for racial violence that it earned the nickname Bombingham. And on September 15th, the city lived up to its dark reputation when four little black girls, Addie Mae Collins, Cynthia Wesley, Carole Robertson, and Denise McNair, were murdered in one of the most horrific terrorist attacks in American history. This wasn't just a random act of hate. It was deliberate, organized, and carried out by white supremacists with ties to the Ku Klux Klan. And despite the FBI knowing exactly who did it, justice was delayed for decades because the very agency that was supposed to investigate the crime helped to cover it up. At 10:22 a.m. that Sunday morning, the 16th Street Baptist Church, one of the most important black churches in the civil rights movement, was rocked by an explosion. A 19-stick dynamite bomb, planted by the Klan members, ripped through the basement where 5 girls were getting ready for Sunday school. 4 of them didn't make it out alive, but there was a 5th girl, Sarah Collins, who miraculously survived. She was just 12 years old and lost an eye in the blast. To this day, she still carries the scars of that morning. Now this is where it gets even worse. Within days of the bombing, the FBI had already identified the key suspects: Robert Chambliss, Thomas Blanton, Herman Cash, and Bobby Frank Cherry. They were all members of the Ku Klux Klan, and local black residents knew exactly who they were. But instead of arresting them, J. Edgar Hoover's FBI sat on the case. Why? Because Hoover was more focused on surveilling Martin Luther King Jr. than he was taking down white supremacists. In fact, the FBI didn't just drag its feet, they actively suppressed evidence that could have led to early convictions. Chambliss wasn't convicted until 1977, 14 years later. Blanton and Cherry weren't convicted until 2001 and 2002, nearly 40 years after the bombing. And Herman Cash, he got away with it. He died a free man in 1994. This wasn't incompetence, it was a cover-up. The FBI had informants inside the KKK. In fact, nearly 1 out of every 4 Klansmen in Birmingham were secretly an FBI informant. That means the government knew exactly what the Klan was doing and still chose to do nothing. And let's not forget, this bombing wasn't an isolated incident. Between 1947 and 1965, Birmingham saw over 50 racially motivated bombings. That's why the city was called Bombingham. The Klan terrorized black communities for decades, and law enforcement, including the FBI, let them. So let's ask the real question. Was the FBI simply negligent, or were they complicit? Because when you delay justice for 40 years, when you sit on evidence, when you protect informants who are out bombing churches, you're not just failing to do your job, you're helping the terrorists. The 4 little girls who died that day never got to grow up. They never got to see the civil rights movement succeed. Their families never got real justice, and while we like to pretend that history's in the past, the truth is it's not. We're still dealing with the same systems of racial injustice that allowed these bombers to walk free for so long. This isn't just history, it's America. And if we don't acknowledge it, we're doomed to repeat it.
On that day, we was gonna have a youth day program. And we were so excited. So we came into the ladies' lounge to freshen up. And while we was in the ladies' lounge, I was looking out the door. And I seen Denise McNair and Cynthia Wesley and Carole Robertson. Their class turned out. So they came in the ladies' lounge and went on to the other side to use the stall. When they came out, Denise McNair, she was in front. So she walked over to my sister Addie and asked Addie to tie the sash on her dress. And when she turned to reach her hand out to tie it, that's when I heard a loud noise. Boom! It was so loud, all I could do was holler, Jesus, Addie, Addie, Addie. And but she didn't answer. So all of a sudden I heard someone holler, somebody bombed the 16th Street Church.
You were only 12 years old, and you know, I have to imagine that trauma, you know, affected you emotionally, you know, losing your sister, but even just witnessing, being the only witness to that bombing. How did that impact your life?
For a long time, I was angry. I was angry at what had happened because of the fact that my sister was killed and my friend was killed, and I lost, my right eye. And I went through life. I was in a nervous state, and the trauma just had me so fearful. I was really afraid, really, to go back into a church.
Now, that church had been used for voter registration and for civil rights organizing, and that is one of the reasons it was targeted. Dr. King talked about the apathy in the community and saying that was partly to blame and that people needed to be not apathetic when it came to voting rights. It was a controversial statement that he made. How do you feel about the fact that we're still fighting to this day for the right to vote?
It made me real angry about it because so many people, they was injured. So many people was killed for those rights, for them try to turn it around now.
Yeah.
They shouldn't turn it around because we deserve to vote. And those girls' death really changed everything, for us to get our voting rights.
Indeed.
You think there's a reason that you were spared, your life was spared?
Yes, I really do believe my life was spared to tell the story.